Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all again for joining our fifth LinkedIn Live to celebrate the launch of the new ConeX portal. We've got another great supplier session coming up this afternoon, and obviously we've been joined by another brilliant panel. I'll let them introduce themselves in a second, and then we'll hand straight over to Melissa, who's going to do a brilliant talk for us today. So any questions, any comments, any ideas that you want to ask Melissa, myself, or any of the others in the room, then feel free just to comment along as we go in LinkedIn, and we will pick up on them and have a bit of a discussion on the chat. Little bit of ConeX admin. Everyone should have had their logins or passwords. The discussion channel is now starting to grow. We've got a number of members who have signed up and who are now discussing and chatting within there. So that'll be good. If you're struggling or if you haven't got a password, just drop me a message and I'll fire that out to you so you're aware. That's all I've got to say on ConeX. So I will very quickly give a quick introduction of everyone that we've got in the room. So I'll start with Gerard, if you want to give a quick who you are and where you come from.
Thanks, Sam. My name is Gerard, and I run a company called Printpool, which is a 3D printing and prototyping service based in Oxford. We've recently been certified as a carbon neutral small business, and we have a few other interesting green policies as well.
Brilliant, thank you. Mark, as the guest today. You are muted, remember.
I'm Mark Meadows. I'm a director of a technical moulding company called Talisman Plastics in Malvern, Worcestershire. And we are progressing well on our journey to achieve the ISO 14001 environmental standard.
Brilliant, thank you. And Sihab.
Hi, my name's Sihab from Dukin. We are a design engineering consultancy and software distributor. We're also part of the UK District Energy Association and do a lot of work with businesses who are getting into sustainability and using simulation to help that process.
Perfect. And obviously these sessions are supported by Adam, the expert behind LinkedIn Live. So I'll quickly let him introduce himself as well.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Adam Payne, Factory IQ. I have a number of businesses, but Factory IQ is the smart factory made simple. So it's all about digital manufacturing. So yes, nice to meet you all.
Brilliant. So as I say, if anyone's got any questions for any of the guys there, feel free to drop them in the chat. And we'll get started. So our guest today is Melissa Mooney from EQS Management Systems. So I'll hand over if you want to take the floor.
Thank you. Nice to see everyone today, and welcome everyone on LinkedIn. My name is Melissa Mooney, and I founded my business EQS Management Systems in 2020, and I support businesses with implementation of quality management systems to ISO standards, as well as environmental management systems to ISO 14001 standard. I help with businesses with legal compliance, understanding their legal requirements, developing registers of legislation and auditing them to check that they are compliant with regulations. I also help with environmental improvements, identification of environmental impacts, and helping people to develop an action plan to move forward. My background, I've been in manufacturing for over 20 years in flour milling, cider making, and packaging. So I'm well used to being in a manufacturing environment. I've worked in sort of a technical role in quality, health and safety, environmental management, and food safety. So I worked in the food industry, and I specialise in environmental management and quality. I'm very passionate about environmental management and helping businesses improve. So I've spent many years in manufacturing, looking at risks to the environment, the impacts, pollution prevention, and management systems. And I'm passionate about helping businesses achieve their goals and aspirations using management systems and good environmental practice. So how do I do it? I very much help people to understand where they are now with techniques and tools such as gap analyses against the standards, environmental reviews to understand the environment in which the business is working, whether there are any sensitive receptors next to their site, just the history of the site, just getting a big picture of what the situation is. Looking at systems in place and what they have. And I like to build on what people have already rather than creating something that's totally new, just building on what people are already doing, but understanding first where they are. So helping people put in place processes, understanding what the processes are, developing them, developing systems, procedures and documentation to meet the requirements of the standards, helping them to implement those and to audit and then progress to certification if that's what they want. So I try to be very realistic as I've worked in industry, managing and maintaining these systems myself. I know what it's like to have to keep them up to date and maintain them. So I like to be realistic, pragmatic, practical, and create something that's bespoke to the business itself. So why would we want to improve environmental performance? Well, the World Economic Forum Global Risk Report in 2021 stated that environmental threats are amongst the greatest by likelihood and impact. So they are recognised as a big issue to the world, to businesses, to individuals. And by 2050, the equivalent of almost 3 planets could be required to sustain our current lifestyle. So it's clear that we need to do something to change because we only have one planet. So just a quick introduction to sustainable development and how environmental management fits into that. So the definition of sustainable development, according to the Brundtland report, is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So I'm sure you will have heard this definition before. It was developed in 1987, so quite some time ago. And so sustainability is comprised of 3 pillars: environmental, society, and economy. People, planet, and profits, as people like to call it these days. I'm showing my age now. So it's clear that there are big improvements in social and environmental performance to achieve sustainability and economic viability. There are lots of issues in the world, not just climate change, pollution of air, land and water. We've heard about particulates and the impact that has on asthma. Contaminated land, water pollution has been very much in the news with the sewage undertakers discharging large amounts of sewage when there's been storm overflows. Things like soil degradation, biodiversity loss, which is a real problem, climate change, which I know some of you are actively working on, waste, resource depletion, deforestation, increasing in population, meaning that we need to be more sustainable with our food production. So lots of issues that businesses and individuals, we all have to deal with and handle. As I said, you've probably seen a lot of this stuff in the news, sewage pollution. There's been lots of fires in the news at the moment. Firefighting runoff is often a problem if it's not going where you want it to go. And climate change, we've just had COP26, which has been dominant in the news, but also was the biodiversity conference recently as well, which has not had quite such a headline in the news. So what are the drivers and why should we improve environmental management or environmental sustainability, if you want to call it that? So legislation is a key issue, key driver, and is going to be increasing more and more. So we've just had the Environment Act, which has been received royal assent. I think it was the 9th of November. So quite a wide-ranging piece of legislation. and I'll go into a bit more about that in a little while. Other things like plastics tax, extended producer responsibility obligations. So there's more and more legislation coming through that will drive improvements in environmental management. And it's all based on the principles of polluter pays, the precautionary principle, prevention at source, and preventive action to avoid environmental damage. So it's really important that businesses and manufacturers keep an eye on what's going on. And I'll say a bit more about that shortly. So investors, banks are looking at environmental performance. The biggest companies will be required to produce climate disclosures in April next year. These are the sort of large companies which have over 500 people and a turnover of over 500 million. So there's going to be lots of changes, and the banks are looking at carbon as an example. I've spoken to banks recently, and that's, it's becoming more and more prevalent, more and more important in investment decisions because it is a risk to the bank. Consumers and customers are increasingly interested in and making decisions on environmental performance. The supply chain is becoming more and more important. If you're looking at your carbon footprint, then scope 3 is something that is a trickier thing to look at, but is what you really need to do, and what the governments are expecting if you tender for large government contracts. They've extended their carbon requirements to including scope 3 as well. So lots of work, and all these things sort of filter down the supply chain. So they start off with the larger companies and the bigger polluters, and then it filters down to smaller businesses and through the supply chain. So one way or another, people will be affected by a lot of these things. Competitiveness and efficiency, really important for businesses to survive and to grow and to thrive in this day and age, especially after all the issues that we've had over the last 2 years. Increases in energy costs, net zero. So all these things are important for efficiency and for getting new customers, new contracts, winning them. It's really important. And there's also an expectation on businesses to behave responsibly. So you've all heard of CSR, corporate social responsibility, or ESG as it tends to be termed these days. So lots of drivers for and reasons why businesses should improve their environmental performance. So the Environment Act, which came out, it's taken about 2 years to come through, which is, at last it was gone through Parliament and is now enshrined in law. So it's all about governance and targets, making sure there are plans and policies and statements and reports to improve and report on. So one of the things that the government will have to be reporting on is, for example, the sewage overflows that I talked about from the water industry, and they in turn will be required to report whenever there are spillages into the rivers. So lots of targets coming through. There's a requirement for setting environmental targets, which will cover air quality, water, nature, and biodiversity. Also things like waste and resource efficiency. And specifically, there's going to be targets for PM 2.5, which is a particulate. It's 2.5 microns size of it. That's what it's called. PM 2.5, and also species abundance. And there's be a target for 2030, the end of 2030. So lots of targets being brought in, draft targets for the environment. So this is air quality, water, nature, and biodiversity, as well as species abundance, and PM 2.5 will need to be put before Parliament on the 31st of October 2022. So it's not long away. and there will be a consultation coming out on draft targets, which is expected by February next year. So it's all moving quite quickly, and there'll be a lot for businesses to get their heads round and to keep an eye on to see how this is going to affect them. Incidentally, if anybody is interested in the Environment Act, a lovely weighty tome of 270 pages long, I can send anyone a summary if they would like it. Just send me an email and I can send you out that. So challenges, lots of challenges for businesses. Do they have the information and the knowledge to meet these requirements? Technology, obviously there's a cost. Important to engage your workforce and others so that you can implement improvements. Making the business case, obviously I think the drivers speak for themselves really. So lots of challenges, but I can see lots of businesses collaborating and working together to meet these challenges. ConeX is a good, example of how businesses are working together to help each other collaborate. So lots of tools, lots of challenges. So tools to help you improve. ISO 14001, and I would say this unbiased, is a great framework and structure to help you improve your environmental performance, because it gives you a framework to understand your impacts so that you can prioritize and focus on what's important. There are so many issues. It's important to have a picture of all of them really, and then determine which are the priorities. Understand your environment you're working in, your risks, your opportunities, who your interested parties are and what their expectations are, what your legislation is. So it's really a really good structure and framework. I've been working with it for 20 years and I still believe it's a fantastic tool. So the benefits, as I say, competitive edge. You're tendering for business especially, helps you reduce your risks because you've identified your impacts, you've improved your legal compliance, helps with efficiencies and savings, controlling your processes, provides you with opportunities to look at your products, perhaps green them, develop your NPD process, and look at how you can influence as well your suppliers and your customers. Continually improving what you're doing, helping you to be resilient, structured, and ISO 14001 takes a life cycle approach. So as I say, it helps you look at your suppliers, look at your customers, and see how you can influence and control them. So that's the end of my bit.
Melissa, just very quickly, we've had two questions.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Right.
First one.
Fire away.
This is Tolu. In addition to the new laws, is the government doing anything to support businesses in their sustainability measures?
There are lots of different schemes. There's something called Innovate, which is some of you might have heard of, which helps provide grants for people developing technologies, green technologies and that kind of thing. There's the local enterprise partnerships in each county or area. So the Worcestershire LEP is providing energy efficiency surveys, and I think they do carbon footprint as well, and helping, there's advice there and help to introduce new technologies.
I'll come back to the second one later because I'll let the forum, the panel here ask questions.
I've got some questions. There's obviously a lot of information there to take in. I've also got a question for Mark in a minute. But yeah, there's loads of information that you've just given there in 15 minutes. I'm sure there's a whole lot more that you're able to provide as well. How do businesses kind of go about knowing where to focus first? It kind of seems like there's so much going on and so many options and so many opportunities? How do they know, what's the best way to go about it? Because, from looking at it from what we've discussed there, it looks like there's a lot going on and there's a lot of boxes they've got to tick.
I think the best place to start with most things is understanding what your impacts are. So you can do that by looking at your processes, your inputs and your outputs of your processes, doing an environmental review, understanding the history of your site. Have you had a petrol tank, that was there and was removed in the past? Were there any, polluting activities going on? I don't know, oil leakages into the soil. Looking at the surroundings. Are you amongst a residential area? Are you next to some sensitive receptors like, I don't know, protected sites, a triple SI or a stream? Does your drainage system surface water drain into a stream? Do you just looking at all your activities, where's the potential? So creating a list of those, understanding them, scoring them, using a scoring system to look at how significant they are, and then you can prioritize which areas you look at first. That's always the best way, I think, just understanding, because otherwise you don't you're not really really know where to focus.
And Mark, you're going through some of these processes at the moment, aren't you? How are you actually finding it? Is it easy to manage? Is it not? What's it like from your opinion?
How we found it? We found it a bit of a minefield of requirements initially, but we employed services of Melissa to set out the criteria in which we should be working through in a logical manner, and it's gone fairly smoothly over the last 3 or 4 months. We've been working on it, despite the fact we're in a COVID crisis still. We found it relatively easy to work through in small chunks, supported by Melissa.
Brilliant. It's good to hear. Obviously, at the end of this session, Melissa, I just asked you to give all your details so everyone can get in touch with you.
Yeah.
A question from Peter Francis midway through that was, and I want to kind of open this up to everyone here to see if we've got any ideas. How do we get people and businesses to actually want to make changes instead of forcing them to do it by legislation? It's quite an interesting question. If anyone's got any ideas on that, good luck.
I think that's a very valid question. It kind of goes on to a point I was going to ask Melissa and Mark as to what were the actual driving factors that you see most commonly. Is it from things like COP26, where it's much more a conversation around energy, or is it much more a case from around efficiency within the businesses to see how we can drive sustainability from that element? What was the driving factor for yourself, Mark? What was it? What are the trends you're seeing, Melissa, and how can we publicize that then?
Do you want to go first, Mark?
Yes. Some of the driving factors for myself were actually my children. My children know what I do for a living, work in the plastics industry, have done for 35 years. And I think younger people are more environmentally aware than perhaps the older generation. And it's been a push for my children, pushing me, what are you doing to support the environmental impacts? And then from talking with other directors within the business, that seems to be a pattern. We're all of a similar age, we've all got similar age children, that our children are pushing us. So that's initiated it. Then we've looked around, and in our particular area, recruiting younger people into our industry, in the plastics industry, in the engineering industry, has been difficult. So we've decided we want to be a leader in the plastics industry of developing environmentally friendly products, which we've already done several of, and setting the standards for manufacturing plastic products, which can actually help the environment. But it's about an educational process internally and externally.
I think that's very interesting. So does that mean that you are now starting to see the benefits of it as well already, having started that process then? Are you starting to see, attract more people and attract more attention from that viewpoint?
I certainly think we're attracting more attention. People at the moment is still difficult, but certainly more attention from other plastics companies within the industry and from customers. We've recently secured quite a large contract, and some of that was on the back of working towards the environmental standard, because it's something that customer is interested in doing themselves.
Yeah, I think it's lots of different reasons, but I think people are, as Talisman, are wanting to do the best for the environment and improve performance. Also, as you say, customers are seeing it as a plus point, and it gives you the edge over somebody else. So I think it's a mixture of different reasons. COP26 has really raised environmental issues to the forefront for many people. So it'll be interesting to see how the motivations change over the next year or so. But yeah, I mean, there's efficiency as well. Seeing how you can make cost savings in terms of energy efficiency, water reduction, reducing risks is all excellent, and can be reasons for choosing to put in an environmental management system. Also, unfortunately, if a particular business may have received attention from the Environment Agency for whatever reason, or are looking to get a permit, then having an environmental management system is really helpful, and is giving confidence to the Environment Agency that they are managing their risks. So I think there's lots of different reasons for why you might put in a system.
I think that was something I read recently, Melissa. I can't remember the article, was it when they did a survey across manufacturers, and I think what was their biggest sort of like issue that they feel moving forward, and I think they were expecting it to be COVID and Brexit, and it wasn't. It was actually the end user portraying them from a sustainability side and environmental side.
Yeah.
They've seen that as a big thing for the the end user and customer actually looking, and like Mark said, looking at what the businesses are trying to do from this environmental impact, and actually making a lead on that, and they see that as a big source. So there's a big focus, and it should be, and so there should be.
Yeah.
But again, I find it interesting as well from a Mark's point of view, in attracting the younger generation as well. And this is where the younger generation need to step up, because this is where they can really make a change within manufacturing as well. It's not this dirty, grimy place that the mainstream media make it out to be. It is actually one of the main areas where you really can make a difference and impact the environmental side. Yeah.
And there's lots and lots of good work you can see in manufacturing everywhere. So much work going on. So you're quite right. It's not the dirty, industry. It's making lots of changes.
I have a quick question for you, Melissa, if that's all right. I mean, it sounds like ISO 14001's a really interesting way of sort of starting to formalize some of these commitments. But how far does it actually take us along the road to being a really environmentally responsible business? So if we all woke up in the morning and every business in the UK was suddenly compliant and certified with ISO 14001, how far would that take us? Would that be problem solved, or what would we need to do beyond that?
Well, the whole remit of ISO 14001 is about continual improvement, and so you can keep improving. You might start off just looking at environmental issues. You then might want to incorporate within your management system things like the UN sustainability goals. And incorporate those, look at those as opportunities to develop your system further. So it is a process of continual improvement, and you can keep doing that hopefully that's answered your question.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you
you.
very
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's other ways, there's other tools like B Corp and, various other tools to help make improvements. So that there are other options out there.
Perfect. So we're very quickly coming to the end of that half-hour session. That went very quick. There have been all sorts of comments and questions, so thank you for everyone that's engaged in there. What I'll do, I'll pull some of those out and I'll send them over to you, Melissa, so you can answer those directly from there. And just to finish, obviously, how can we all get in touch with you? Where do we find you? Where are you most active?
I'm quite often on LinkedIn, so you can catch me there. Feel free to connect. My website, you can have a look at my website, which is www.eqsmanagementsystemslimited.co.uk. Or alternatively, email me. If you go onto LinkedIn, my contact details are there. So, yeah, feel free to send a direct message, email, or phone.
And if you're a ConeX member, you've got all of those.
And yes, they're there as well.
Yeah.
Melissa, very quickly, just before because I think this is a cracking question that Sam had sent me, and I was going to ask it. And we've coming around the corner. We've got the Environmental Act 2021 coming up. Is there anything? Do the businesses now at this point now need to start looking to what that is and how that will affect them? What are do you know some of the main points that might be within that for the businesses to look out for?
Yes, I didn't really go into that, did I? Yeah, I mean things like waste and resource efficiency. So there's going to be more of a move to circular and to the producers in paying a bit more towards. So, for example, we've got the plastics tax, which is going to mean £200 per tonne on plastic single use, which has less than 30% recycled material in it. That's coming in next year. So there'll be draft targets coming out next February, but there's things like waste and resource efficiency, biodiversity. So there's going to be things including in planning, which will mean that biodiversity net gain has to be shown. So there could be lots of implications, air quality, water, water reduction, making sure that, water's being used wisely. So maybe targets around that kind of area. So there's lots of things to keep an eye on. I think we'll know a bit more next February exactly what the targets are or what they're going to be looking like. So yeah, it's really important to keep an eye on what's going on as it unfolds.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. As I say, thank you for everyone for joining us. Thank you for the conversation, the comments. I'll go through it all this afternoon and pull out some questions for you. And we will leave that one there for now. So thank you everyone for joining. Thanks to everyone on the panel. And we will see you on Thursday, same time for our next session, which I'll be posting about tomorrow. So have a good afternoon, everybody, and I'll see you later.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thank you.